Over the past week, residents of New Jersey and several other states have witnessed large, in air quote, drones operating in populated areas. The drone activity even caused a runway at Stewart International Airport in New York to be temporarily shut down. Stewart Airport services both commercial and military flights and is adjacent to a New York Air National Guard base where the 105th Airlift Wing is stationed. The FBI and Homeland Security have said that many of the reported drone sightings are, in fact, manned aircraft being misidentified as drones. In a statement, DHS said, at this point, we have not identified any basis for believing that there's any criminal activity involved, that there's any national security threat, that there's any particular public safety threat, or that there's a malicious foreign actor involved in these drones. Some lawmakers and members of the public have suggested that the drones could be anything ranging from Iranian incursion or a military operation to detect a missile nuclear warhead to an alien invasion. President-elect Trump posted on Truth Social, mystery drone sightings all over the country. Can this really be happening without our government's knowledge? I don't think so. But let the public know and now. Otherwise, shoot them down. What do you think these drones are? And what are your thoughts on the government's response? Or I'm going to add to that, perhaps lack of response.
This is a really weird one. Usually when the news and the media report across the board, like on both political sides, in the same tone and voice, you have to wonder what's going on for real. Because I'm like, that's weird. ABC, CBS, they're all reporting the same anger and frustration at these things as Fox News. So let's just set that aside. In my career, I flew drones, a lot of drones, almost every drone in the inventory I was qualified to fly. I taught people how to fly the drones, and I worked a couple of special programs with DARPA on flying drones for task force. That realm was all surveillance and reconnaissance based, right? Getting better situation awareness with a ground force of troops on the ground to be forward of their line so they didn't have to risk themselves when we couldn't get, imagery, surveillance, and reconnaissance aircraft in the area. Drones are historically known for that, right? If a drone is flying, you're thinking it's spying on us. Here's my three major problems. One, it's at night. All these sightings are at night.
Yep.
The infrared and thermal technology, even today, which has advanced in the last decade since I've been in the military, is still not great when it comes to flying at night and identifying what it wants to identify. One, you need light. So if there's no light there and it's a dark night, like most of these videos happen to be in clouds, they're not going to be able to see what's on the ground, especially at distance. Two, most of the drones that I've seen are fixed wing. And you could explain this in detail, but the difference between rotary wing and fixed wing is one's like a helicopter, one's like a plane.
Yeah.
The fixed wing drones that I've seen would have to fly in a tight loiter in order to identify what's on the ground. Like I used to fly a UAV called the Wasp. It was made by Avionics, and it was about this big. And it was real convenient because you could throw it like a paper airplane and surveil out to 3.6 kilometers. The problem, if you saw something on the ground, you could lock it, but then you would have to wait for a go around or a fly around for it to come back around and be on the same site, the same target that's static. And then finally, number three, every single drone video I've seen that claims to be a foreign adversary, Iran, China, etc., being staged off a ship, which is obviously this is where we're at in the country in New Jersey, has illuminated lights on it. Again, you could speak to this because you're a pilot, both fixed wing and rotary wing, but it's like, guys, if a foreign adversary was doing a covert op to surveil, they're not going to have flashing and illuminating lights.
Yeah.
So it's either a commercial drone with some kids flying it around, or like many of the videos I've seen three significant videos that have been reported to be foreign drones, foreign adversary drones, and you could literally see the engines underneath the fixed wings of the plane flying with flashing lights going through clouds, which happens to be likely the same exact aircraft. And you're like, that's an airplane, guys. That's an airplane. So do I think, we're under surveillance? Yes, but a better surveillance option is a satellite or Google Earth, not a localized drone where you could see where it takes off and lands from. It's just, it seems ridiculous, and I'm not jumping on the bandwagon on this one.
Yeah, I think the fact that we're under surveillance, we can take that off the table. The question becomes, are we under surveillance from our own government or a foreign government? Which, by the way, we're not the only country that has satellites. So I agree with you. If you really wanted to have a low vis stealth surveillance from an airborne perspective, the satellite is probably the way to go. And what you're saying, the loiter, right? The turn, the fixed wing drones, fixed and rotary wing, one looks like a helicopter. They're probably going to be, it's probably going to require a little bit more power, right? Because you're going vertically, whereas a wing, you're driving forward, you're creating lift off of the wing. One of the things you mentioned, I was going to mention as well, these all seem to have the FAA required navigational lights.
It's like a lighthouse.
Yes, which I am not making fun of anybody. I actually enjoy that people get so enthusiastic about certain things, but we don't have to strip away the reality of what we're looking at. Like participate in the fairy tale if you want to, but they do seem to have the navigational lights, and so it's a green light and a red light. There's strobes, and that is, of course, so things don't run into things in the air. You would think that it's an almost limitless expanse of air up there, and the number of times that two objects nearly meet each other would probably terrify the average civilian getting ready to go on a commercial airline. Don't spend too much time looking into that because you will literally scare the shit out of yourself. So, yeah, if it is I mean, let's go to the far extreme where people think it's aliens. I mean, do you really think that an intelligent entity that had the ability to travel through space and time wouldn't have the ability to create a craft that was indetectable to the human eye and would fly it at a level that was, and again, illuminated by what appears to be navigational lights and strobes? I don't think that's the case. Iranian incursion, I don't even know. I mean, I'm not super familiar with the geography of where Jersey is. I could find it on a map, but where would they be staging them from? Are you telling me that they have some Iranian or Chinese vessel that this fleet of drones is launching from? I don't think so. And I'll go back to, and I'm not going to claim I know what it is, but I will say this, in my own personal experience, and I'm curious what you guys called it in the Army. We would do rut trips, realistic urban terrain trips, and we would coordinate with state and federal law enforcement. And we would also have the 160th there with us. And in places like Boston or downtown Los Angeles, we are flying blacked out helicopters at a level one time where we were in LA that it was setting off car alarms as we were going down the roads. Incredibly fast. We were doing rooftop landings on skyscrapers in LA, and the same thing in Boston. I can only fathom what people may have thought we were, because we were, in fact, actually blacked out. So there's a lot of things that happen. And I bet you that night, or those nights that we were doing that, the 911 call center might have been a touch more active in the area that we were operating in. Just people saying, hey, what's going on? Is this something that I should be concerned with? So I can see the full spectrum of what is possible here. But I have to go with you on this one. I can't find a way to hop on the bandwagon that A, this is how an alien race is identifying themselves to us, or is exposing themselves to us, and B, that if they were going to do that, they would do it in Jersey. I just can't combine the two.
Yeah, I want to believe, and I want it to be something crazy. You know what? The concerning component to me is how much the national legacy corporate media. I want to cover all those bases, because they deserve all those titlings. There's always an agenda, and they have only a certain segment of time to be able to put out information, and most of that is propaganda. It happens to be propaganda. It's one of the reasons why me and you had conversations of starting the show, is just to get to the ground truth and not tell people how to think, but explore opinions and options, other than the narrative. On the narrative, everybody across the board is talking the same outrage. Like, what is going on here? What is this? Congressional hearings, all this outrage about a particular story that's covered the headlines and taken up all the time blocks. The first thing I asked myself is like, what are we not talking about? And then I looked a little bit into it, and some of the elements, for example, Iran, which is apparently a couple weeks from getting a nuclear bomb. And so in that window under the Biden administration, with an interview I saw with John Kirby, it was like, are you guys going to allow that to happen? They're like, absolutely. That will not happen under our watch. We still got you still got a month and some change. So if that's the case, and there's a potential strike that's going to take place, and that should be the headline, and we don't want to telegraph that, then maybe the national media across the board, from production notes disseminated through email, whatever that, however that works, is pushing this narrative and this story to distract from what actually is going to happen here in the near future. I mean, what's not been in the headlines is the strikes we've done in Syria against ISIS. Almost every night, we've been striking them in the desert. What's not in the headlines is al-Baghdadi's, one of his guys, creates this terrorist organization and then takes over the entire country of Syria. And oh, by the way, hands over an American hostage that they find in a prison, because what's worse, a murderous dictator, Assad, or an AQ spinoff. And it's like, oh, these things are going on in the background. So I just hear all this and I'm like, we're being distracted from something. Maybe it's deliberate, maybe it's not, but it seems like it is because it's distracting.
I wish that our government was coordinated enough to pull something like that off.
Yeah, that's too much credit, right?
I mean, maybe, right? And I mean, again, I agree with you. The original ideas about doing something like this was to think and just talk openly without telling people this is what you should believe and things that you should look at. I mean, span the gambit. Look at all of those different options. To me, when I look at them, about strikes in Syria and stuff going on over there, that one doesn't surprise me because that's kind of historically been the case. After the GWAT wound down a little bit, people think that kinetic operations tapered off, and to a degree that they did, and I'm basing that off of conversations I have with people who are still active, but they didn't stop. So there's a military presence and a special operations presence in 30, 40 countries throughout the world. They're active and it's not being reported on, so that doesn't surprise me. Um, I honestly think what's interesting is that the government is claiming that they don't know what these are largely, or that they're just civilian aircraft. If I had to guess, it's probably my guess, which counts for only my opinion. If it is actually anything other than things being misconstrued, like it very likely could be a helicopter or an airplane, especially in a cloud going in for an instrument approach, whatever it may be, it could very well be those things. If it's not that, my guess would be that it is in fact probably government tech or an exercise somewhere that's just being worked out, and they don't want to tell you what it is. And you and I both know this in our experience with working with the government and some covered programs. That's just how it is sometimes.
Yeah, I think that's the most valid justification for what's going on. And despite it seeming um, very much like a conspiracy and something shady going on, like at the time, remember this time period that Texas was all the civilians that were reporting all of this military maneuvering.
Oh
They had
yeah,
all
it was
these.
a full-on military takeover.
Yeah, and that was a big exercise that I knew about because I had been briefed on it as a sergeant major, and some of our guys were participating, but it was just a joint exercise. It
Yeah.
wasn't anything crazy. It was a test between, interagency cooperation between a state and a federal partner. That's all it was. But again, like if you did a rut in Boston or LA, I've done ruts in rural North Carolina, for example, where the local population knows it's happening because they get notification, and they're on the side of the roads in lawn chairs drinking beer, eating popcorn, watching us fly down the street in a little bird.
Yeah.
And it's like there's different paths to that and there's
Yeah.
different places for that, but it doesn't mean it's like some subversion operation, clandestine dark ops going on in the background. That means it's bad. I agree with you. I think that's what it is. I think it was like a potential test on security. They lobbed a whole bunch of UAVs up. Some of those got reported. Then after that, it scared the crap out of people. And now everybody who sees something flying in the air, including a commercial airliner, is like, look, a drone. It's like, no, that's an airplane. And on the lights, it's like, guys, if a foreign adversary, I don't think I've ever flown a drone, and I've flown many on live operations. I've flown drones. I don't think I've ever had or flown a drone that actually had any kind of lights on it, because when you're manufacturing a drone for reconnaissance or surveillance, or even to drop a munition, you're not going to overtly you might put an infrared beacon on it,
Yeah.
like you said, but you're not going to put an overt indication because you're not trying to be compliant with FFA regulations.
FAA. What the hell is the FFA? That's like a home lending.
CFA.
Yeah, it's like a home
Yeah,
lending
yeah.
organization.
Yeah. Yeah, you're not going to have to be compliant to that. And lastly, a good point that you brought up is the staging. Remember, most of these drones, even if they're the size of a car, have humongous power consumption issues. And so they have to be closely staged to where they're at. They can deploy, but they're not going to be miles away.
Yeah.
They're going to be within a couple kilometers max of their destination. So if you see it in the air, more than likely you're going to see it take off or land somewhere. My last program I worked with DARPA was using a drone that was disguised as a vulture, as a bird. And I was like, this is the dumbest idea ever. And I was testing it and actually lost control of it. I thought so. And I told the DARPA guy, I'm like, hey man, this thing's not working. And he's like, I don't understand. Let me see it. And he's trying to control. He's like, oh, that's a bird, Mike. You're actually on a bird now. And I was staring. I had lost track of the drone because I'm like, this is so stupid. I had picked up a vulture in North Carolina because they're everywhere and was trying to fly a vulture. And it's like, that's the kind of tactics they're using in covert surveillance, not an overt drone that looks like a commercial airliner.
Agreed. And also, aliens, if you're listening, don't do Jersey. We can do better. All right.
Yeah.
Go to Miami.
Why Jersey?
Yeah, go to Miami. You will be far more satisfied with what you find.